Welcome to the College Admissions Process Podcast presented by Prep Expert. Prep Expert offers live online SAT and ACT courses with the best score guarantees, instructors, and curriculum. Go to prepexpert.com to guarantee your child's success. Welcome to The Cap, where we are here to speak with college reps and other professionals in the field of college admissions to help answer all your questions and guide you through every step of the process. So if you're serious about college admissions, you've come to the right place. Are you ready? Let's talk about it. And now, here's your host, Dr. John Durante. Welcome to The Cap, the College Admissions Process Podcast. I am your host, John Durante, and it gives me great pleasure to introduce to you today Stephen Pultz, who's the Assistant Vice President for Enrollment at the University of San Diego. Now, I saw Stephen when NACAC was out in Los Angeles. He was doing a presentation. Afterwards, I went up to him, we talked, and I'm grateful that he's here today to share and add value to all of you, our listeners. So, Stephen, thank you so much for being here today. How are you?
I am doing great. Thank you. Thank you so much for having me. Pleasure.
It's our honor and pleasure. So, Stephen, let me ask you, what can you tell us about some of your most popular academic programs that set it apart from other universities? And can you share any unique experiential learning or internship opportunities tied to these programs that help students prepare for life even after graduation?
Yeah, absolutely. University of San Diego is really known first and foremost, I think, as a liberal arts university, and so what that means is not only do we offer a wide variety of programs, we have about 65 majors altogether, but believe very strongly that we want students to come and to explore, to really develop those academic skills that are going to help them throughout their not only their time at USD, but well beyond that. They're going to be able to explore and develop excellent writing skills, analytic skills. They're going to take courses in the sciences and the arts, the social sciences. They'll develop additional language skills, and they do all of that through what we call our core curriculum, which is the foundation of all of our students' undergraduate experience. Many of our students come to us knowing what they want to major in, but many come simply because they don't have to declare a major, and I'll get into that later when we talk about the application, but students don't actually apply to a major at USD, they apply to the university. And so the students are going to have that opportunity to really work with our faculty, explore classes and some things that interest them, and then ultimately declare their major by the end of their second year. So that core curriculum is really foundational to us. I think USD is known a lot for our programs in the sciences, biology, chemistry, physics. We have a wonderful environmental studies program. One of our largest areas of study is in business. The Canal School of Business Administration has a number of different areas students can explore. And also the Shiley Marcus School of Engineering. And we have a number of engineering programs that students can take advantage of that are very popular as well. But all of those are really grounded in that strong liberal arts component, which again, I think is the foundation for us. I think a couple of things that help set our academic programs apart. One is the individual attention students get. All of our students are matched up with academic advisors on the faculty. So they really get to work with professors right from the start to really identify all these choices they have of the curriculum, but also begin to explore their major, identify parts of the curriculum that they might want to explore a little bit more. Each of the three main undergraduate schools and colleges at USD, the College of Arts and Sciences, Business and Engineering, also have a complementary set of programs that are designed to be career preparation programs. And they allow students to, in essence, earn points or earn credit and satisfy those requirements by attending different lectures, by meeting with our Career Services Center, by attending one of our career fairs and things like that. So we really help students really begin to think about that right from a very early point at their time at USD. Our programs are all complemented through an extensive set of internships around San Diego. We're known very much for our ability to provide students with undergraduate research experiences, so it's not at all uncommon for a student to partner with a faculty member doing some research. And we're also known very much for our study abroad experiences around the world. So those all complement all of our undergraduate majors and I think help describe a little bit about the academic environment at USD.
Well, that's terrific. Obviously, you're a liberal arts university with 65 majors, but you explained beautifully that you don't have to declare a major from the get-go. Students are immersed in things like the sciences, arts, social sciences, and so much more as part of your core curriculum. You have three schools, arts and sciences, business and engineering, and of course, who doesn't love a rich study abroad program? So thank you for that intro. And Stephen, as a Catholic institution, how does the University of San Diego integrate faith and service into the student experience? And are there specific programs or initiatives that help students connect these values with their academic and even personal growth?
Absolutely. I think faith is, and the exploration of faith and those values are really woven into every aspect of campus life, certainly through the curriculum. I mentioned the core curriculum, and as a part of that, all students here at USD will take two courses in religion and in philosophy as well. But the religious classes will give them, allow them opportunity to explore not only their own faith, but perhaps a different faith tradition as well. I think it's very much woven into the fabric of campus life. We have a very active university ministry program here, which offers everything from retreats to prayer breakfasts and things like that. We have a number of different programs, community service work that's done through a number of organizations here on campus. I think that's a characteristic of our students is that they are very much committed to giving back and into a service orientation. And so one of the programs that we have here, the Mulvaney Center for Community Action, CASA is what we call it, and it's a way to really engage students, not only in San Diego, across the border in Tijuana, but all throughout our region. And so students are really able to really practice their faith in a lot of very tangible ways as they make their way through. And in fact, we were recently recognized by Washington Monthly Magazine for being one of the top 5 institutions in the country because of the extent to which our students and our faculty are engaged in community service work. And so it's a real integral part of campus life as well as our curriculum.
Well, that's terrific. A lot to offer academically, and the students are engaged in that community service, which is so important, not only in terms of their academic growth, but as community members, right? Whether they're at USD or even after graduation. Now,
Right.
Stephen, I read that your retention rate is 92%, which represents, of course, the percentage of students that return to USD after their freshman year. So, what programs do you have in place to help students transition to your school community from their many high schools, right? While then wanting to return to campus after that freshman year?
Yeah, we're really very proud of our retention and ultimately graduation rates as well, and that's certainly what this is all about, right? It's not just getting students here, but helping make sure they're successful and go on to graduate. And there's a number of things we do, and I think our engagement with students really starts from the moment they decide to come to USD, right around May 1 when they submit their deposit. Over the summer, there's a whole bunch of opportunities for them to connect not only with our current students. We offer programs around the country called summer send-offs here at USD. They're hosted by alumni, they're hosted by current parents, and they're ways to bring together, for example, on Long Island, all the students in the New York area who might have been admitted, where they get to meet each other. They get often coming from many different high schools, as you mentioned, but get to meet our current students. Parents get to talk about all those very specific things they want to know about. You know, what's the size of the sheets I should bring, and what comes with the room, and all of those kind of practical things. But students also get a great opportunity to really begin to feel like they're connected to a broader community. We have certainly once classes just prior to the semester, we have an orientation program that again is really all about that finding belonging, finding a way that students can connect to the resources that we have, connecting to each other, being familiar with the university's core values and how they can connect and be a part of those things. So those are some of the things we do even before the semester starts. I mentioned earlier that all of our students are assigned a personal advisor, one of our faculty members, and I think that's another contributing factor to our really positive retention rate because students get to work with their professors not only in the classroom, but they meet with that professor outside the classroom as well. They'll meet during office hours. They'll get a chance to just talk about their goals, their aspirations, sometimes their struggles, what they're working with. And faculty can really be a great resource to help make sure students are being proactive and getting the help that they need before they fall too far behind and those kind of things. USD is a very residential environment, and so the residence halls here, I think, are also a really important component of that retention experience. We like many universities have moved to a themed residence hall experience. We call them living learning communities, and students will pick the theme that they like to be a part of, and it's a great way for them to again meet other students who they might not normally take a class with around this central theme. Faculty members are a part of that, so again, integrating the academic with the social aspect of things is another, I think, really valuable part of that first year experience that students take advantage of. And all of those things have helped contribute to what we think are really successful first year experiences and ultimately graduation rates as well.
Well, that's terrific. You mentioned the graduation rates. Obviously, the retention rate is well above the national average. And I love how you talked about the living learning communities, the supportive faculty, but especially the summer send offs, which are taking place around the country, even before students come to campus, so that they could get to meet people from their same area in terms of where they're from. Hopefully, making friends. And then when they come to your
Right.
campus, that'll help them with the transition. So it's great that you're so mindful of the fact that students are coming from many different places, but you're very mindful in terms of bringing them together and helping them succeed once they're on your campus. And I mentioned that because I think it's a good question for students and their families to ask when they visit a campus or they see an admissions representative, whether it's at a college fair or at their high school, in terms of asking, what is the transition like? What is the college doing in terms of helping all of these students coming from so many different places transition to that wonderful thing we call the University of San Diego? And so, another thing that's very important to students and their families, of course, is the cost of college, right? So, Stephen, with the rising cost of education being a concern for so many families and looking beyond the traditional financial aid process, what specific scholarships or even financial aid programs are available at USD that prospective students might not be aware of? And do you have any tips for students applying for these scholarships?
Yeah, it is a significant investment for sure that families go through, and trying to compile a variety of different sources to help with the cost is really important. And I think I'll start with a tip is just to really start early, long before students are formally admitted to a place. Really begin to investigate different opportunities that students might have. Here at the University of San Diego, we, in addition to the need-based financial aid, which you alluded to, that students will file the free application for federal student aid for, USD offers a variety of merit scholarships that they're automatically considered for in the admissions process. And those are based not on a family's financial picture, but the student's academic abilities. And again, our staff nominates students for that, and they find that out when they're admitted, whether or not they received one and how much that's going to be. So that often helps close some of that gap. USD is the host of one of the largest naval ROTC programs on the West Coast, and so ROTC is another opportunity that a lot of students will pursue to help fund their education. And beyond that, we really encourage students to really pursue what we call outside scholarships. Those can be scholarships through maybe their parents' work experience, local community organizations, and things like that. We actually have a program that we promote. It's called Scholarship Universe, and it's an app that students can load onto their phone. And by creating a profile, talking about their background, talking about what their academic interests are, they can get matched up with different scholarships. And sometimes they're relatively small ones, sometimes they're larger ones, but those can all become a part of a broader financial aid package that can really help make this a much more affordable option for families. So those are a couple of things I would encourage families to start to think about.
Well, I appreciate the mention of Scholarship Universe. And if you wish, we always put the Office of Undergraduate Admissions in the show notes. But if you want to send any links regarding that or students and families, just do a search and I'm sure you could find it online. As a quick follow up, how accurate, Stephen, would you say are the net price calculators? I know that a lot of people know about them. Some may
Mhm.
use them, some may not. But what could you tell us in terms of helping a family determine what the actual cost would be once they come to USD?
Great question. And I think while the cost calculators, they have a variety of different names, are can be really helpful to give a family at least some idea of what their especially on the need-based side, what they might be eligible for from federal and state kind of things. I think it gets a lot more complicated when you talk about individual institutional financial aid that might be available. And what I mean by that is I'll give USD as an example because I know we're going to talk a little bit about the review process and how we select candidates for admission, but like many private universities, ours is a very holistic process. So yes, we look at grades, and students can put in their grades into these calculators and maybe get a very rough sense of whether they're eligible for a merit scholarship. But the way USD identifies merit candidates is not only the extent of their academic, but also their extracurricular involvement. And so we have a whole host of qualities and characteristics that we look for, that we try to extract from the application based on the questions students answered. And it's really hard to give a family a sense of how that might contribute to a merit scholarship until we've looked at our whole applicant pool, the size and the quality of that pool. So they can be a little bit misleading. I would caution families about it being certainly not meant to be an exact. This is how
Right.
much you're going to get from a particular school, but I think it can be a useful tool, at least on the federal and state aid part, to understand if you're going to be eligible for some of those special programs. But applying to each individual institution, because we all do this a little bit differently, is really the only way to know for sure what you might be eligible for.
Well, I'm glad that I asked that question, and I appreciate the honesty because although it is a good indicator, it's definitely not a perfect science. So, again, everyone should
Sure.
use it. You should engage in it, try to get an idea. But of course, like Steven said, it's not a perfect science. So, again, we appreciate that. And in terms of, again, continuing to help students to be successful, what academic and personal support services does USD offer to help all students, right, regardless of their learning needs, achieve their full potential and navigate challenges during their college experience?
I think USD does a number of things to really help care for the whole person, and that's very much what we're all about. Is not just the academic portion of this, but we want students to really thrive in this environment. And we understand they're coming to us with this is a stressful process, and being in college can be really stressful. And you have not only health but concerns. Many students have different learning differences, and you're far away from home, and there's a lot of things that go into this. And we're here to really help provide a wide array of services for students. And we do that in a number of ways. I mentioned the faculty advising. I keep coming back to that, but I think that's a critical piece where faculty see students in the classroom all the time and can identify, hey, the student seems to be maybe struggling a little bit or they're absent from class. And we have a network where faculty can kind of report that and let somebody know, and we can maybe reach out and be much more proactive in that regard. We have in our residence halls, again, the resident assistants and the resident directors in the residence hall are there to provide a layer of support for caring for people, making sure that they're finding those connections, and if they need resources, how they can do that. University has a wonderful counseling center that offers everything, not only from various health things if students should get sick and whatnot, but also mental health counseling as well. And certainly many universities are moving to telecounseling, where 24 hours a day
Hmm.
students can log on to an app and get some help and someone to talk to, and those kind of things. I mentioned university ministry, another place where students can find that support. One of the wonderful buildings that we're looking forward to opening up in just a couple of weeks here is a brand new wellness center, and it's a wonderful facility, and it's done in partnership with one of the major hospital healthcare providers here in San Diego, Palomar Health, the Palomar Health Wellness Center. And it's going to be a place where not only physically there's going to be lots of opportunity, the counselors will be there, there's lots of places where students can go for that, but it's a way to really kind of broaden, take a much more healthy lifestyle look, and they're going to do everything from cooking classes to fitness classes to yoga and those kind of things. Is really excited about the possibilities of just how we can care for students in a very, very holistic way, make sure that they're reaching out and they're connecting to the resources that are here, and if needed, direct them to more specialized care should they need that. So USD, I think, really spends a lot of time and attention caring for the whole person, wanting to make sure that students are thriving in every way possible here.
Well, we appreciate that. And you talk again about your supportive faculty, but also supports in the residence halls, multiple opportunities for counseling, and of course, that new wellness center, which is going to be awesome to care for all students holistically. And again, I ask these questions because I want students and their families to consider asking these types of questions as well
Yeah.
when they're meeting with representatives again on campus or at a fair. So let's dig a little bit into the application review process, Stephen, if you don't mind. First of all, what are the different ways for a student to apply to USD? For example, we're talking about early decision, early action, rolling. And is there a benefit, Stephen, to applying one way over the other, not only in terms of being admitted, but also for being considered for merit aid?
Well, we try to make it as easy as we can in this process, and we have only one deadline. We have one deadline of December 15th, so we do not have a variety of early options. And we did it one time, and we just found that actually created more of an inequitable process because you have, again, it kind of creates a sense for students. Well, do I apply early? Do I not apply early? Maybe I'll get an advantage on these merit things. And we didn't want to add any more stress to this process than that's already associated with it. We feel through our holistic review process, having one single deadline, being able to review everybody at one time and then letting everybody know at about the same time. So everybody gets equal consideration for not only admission, but all of those merit scholarships. It just really works for us. And I think students find it far less stressful in that process as well.
Well, we appreciate that, reducing those inequities and also lessening the stress of the overall process. We touched upon it a little bit before, but Stephen, could you explain your holistic review process and what specific experiences the admissions team looks for when reviewing those applications?
First and foremost, I think, like most universities, certainly selective universities, we're trying to assess whether the student's going to has the academic background to be successful here. And we do that by spending a lot of time on that high school transcript, really diving into not only what the grades are, but also how that student earned those grades, what kind of coursework they took. Were they involved in honors or AP courses? The context of the school that the student went to is incredibly important for us. And we really read regionally. Our applications are read regionally, so our staff really gets to know and understand the relative competitiveness of high schools, different course offerings that might be available at certain schools, and all of that. So that academic context is really first and foremost the thing that we spend a lot of time on. But in addition to that, as I've tried to allude to, I think this is a place where it's a very special community. We're not that large a place. We want students to contribute to our community in a lot of different ways. And so we take a lot of time looking at all the things that students do outside the classroom as well, the sports they're involved in, the clubs they belong to, their musical talent, their artistic abilities, the degree to which they're involved in community service. Again, I mentioned how important that is as a component here. So our staff looks at a wide variety of different characteristics and qualities that we ask students to talk about, and we give students a lot of chances to highlight those things for us. We're a member of the Common Application. That's the one application students will use to apply. So they'll certainly list out all their activities and the time they spend on those things there. But we also encourage them to use the Common Application essay to maybe elaborate on some things that they're particularly passionate about, whether it's a social cause that they're really passionate about, whether it's an activity that they spend a lot of time on, whether it's a personal or family situation that they feel has had an impact on their grades or their experience. All of those things help provide context to that student's abilities. And so those are a couple of ways students can do that. And then on the Common Application, we also use we have our own questions, which are called member questions. And the member questions are opportunities for not only us to help students understand more about what we value. For example, some of our questions deal with creating a diverse and inclusive environment, engaging in the community, the role of faith in their life. So a couple of things that stand out to USD. We want to give students an opportunity to talk about those things. What resonates with them? What are some things in their own experience, in their own journey that can address those kind of things? And so in addition to that strong academics, all of those other pieces of the application come into play, and our staff reviews all of those, and all of that goes in not only to the admissions decision, but in our selection of those merit scholarships as well.
Well, thank you for the comprehensive answer. And I know that you touched upon the transcript, but I was just curious in terms of the GPA, right? Because we talk a lot about how, not every GPA is equal, right? Some GPAs are created a little differently depending on how high schools weigh courses, or perhaps they don't. Perhaps there's restrictions. And you mentioned that, you're evaluating students based on the context of their high school. So, what can you tell us in terms of just that transcript review? I know you touched upon it, but when it comes to course rigor versus the GPA.
You're absolutely right. There are so many variations in how grade point averages are put together and what's counted and what's not counted. And there's wide discrepancies in what's offered. So some schools, there really aren't very many honors or AP courses available, and at others, your students can be involved in a full set of those. And so in the individual read that we do, we spend a lot of time looking not only at the transcript but the high school profile, which gives us a great understanding and context about that individual high school. What are those? What is that grading scale? What are those course offerings that are available? Are there special tracks or things like that that students can kind of take advantage of? At the University of San Diego, we actually recalculate a grade point average for everybody. So we take everybody on a 4.0 scale. We do weight, so we add points, if you will, to students who've been involved in honors, advanced placement, international baccalaureate courses, and some others. And so we do distinguish between those and college prep classes. And we're looking at the courses in the kind of the five core academic areas, certainly the areas of English and writing, in math, science, and the social sciences, and then language. And so we will recalculate a grade point average on a 4.0 scale, which allows someone to have a 4.2 or 4.4. We have many students whose grade point averages might be higher than a 4.0, but it allows us to at least have some equal footing that everybody has been placed on in terms of what that looks like. And so we have both a given GPA that the high school provides and then our own recalculated GPA. And that gives us a little bit more consistency across such a wide variety of grading scales and school systems around not only the country but around the world.
Well, that's awesome. I appreciate two things. Number one, the fact that you talked about the high school profile, and I can't emphasize enough how important that is to students and their families. As you're preparing for your own college process, college application, it's very important to familiarize yourself, students, with your high school's profile just to get an indication of what it is on the receiving end in the admissions office they're seeing so that you could just have more clarity in terms of the overall process. But I also appreciate how you talked about the fact that not only do you recalculate the GPA, which is great, and so many schools do, but you mentioned that you're looking at the core subjects only in terms of that recalculation, which again, there are many schools out there. And I mention it because that's another great question for students and their families to ask. Do you recalculate? If you're recalculating, are you looking only at core subjects or are you looking at all courses? These are all great answers and great insights, Stephen. So I really appreciate that. So, what would you say are some of the common pitfalls students should avoid when writing their personal statement? And can you share examples of how a unique personal story really elevated an application?
I think one of the biggest things that students fall into, the trap that they fall into, is to try to answer these questions thinking about what we want to hear and not focusing on just being authentic, writing and talking about who they are and what they're interested in, what their goals and aspirations are, and why this institution or that institution is seems like it might be a good fit for them. We trying to think like we might think or answer how we might want that to be, I think comes across sometimes and can be very it loses the personal connection that we're really trying to get with these essay questions. I think it's a really great opportunity for students to talk a little bit more about things that might not be as readily available in the other parts of the application. So we don't necessarily need you to talk about, oh, I was involved in this and that and the other thing. We've got that in other parts of that. You could tell us that maybe there were some things that are particular passions of yours that and experiences that you've had doing those things, and that would be great. What you've learned from them, how you want to translate those things to your college experience. Those are great opportunities to do that. Many times, students will use the essay as an opportunity to really again share some, and I understand it can be painful for students and very personal to maybe talk about their own personal stories, but so many students have had to overcome incredible obstacles in high school, whether it was illnesses or the loss of a job or having to move at different points because of their family situations and whatnot. And those are really valuable things for an admissions office to kind of understand. So when we see maybe a little blip on a transcript, okay, now we have some context of where that came from. The student was dealing with an incredible amount of things that we might not have otherwise known about. And I think the essay is using that to really personalize, identify things that haven't been talked about elsewhere in the application. And again, not thinking about what we want to hear, but really being authentic and students talking about what their passions, dreams, goals, aspirations are the things that I think admissions officers are really looking at. And one essay that always comes to mind, and I think about a lot was and it was when you started to read it, you weren't quite sure where it was going to go, but a student talked about their dining room table.
Hmm.
But when they went on to talk about it, the dining room table and that family was a place where they not only had dinner every night and experienced their own culture and the foods and whatnot, but it was the place where they had arguments, where they found out how much they loved each other, where they talked about their again their what instilled their values from their parents and their grandparents. And they went on to talk about all of that. And when they now look and think about their dining room table, these are all the things that came to mind. And I thought it was just an incredibly clever way to sort of use a very
Hmm.
inanimate object, but to talk about how it, for that family, for that student, that was where their life happened. And that's how they grew and developed and became the person they are. And I think that was a really powerful story. So, again, I think those kind of things that are really authentic, that allow an admissions office to really understand who that person is, or the things that are going to stand out and really make a difference.
Well, that's such a great example, and there's so many lessons to be learned from it. First of all, don't focus too much, students, on the actual topic because there are literally millions of topics. And here's an example, a dining
Absolutely.
room table, right? But what's more important about this topic, it's not just about the dining room table itself, it's the fact that the student was able to articulate that yes, that's where his family or her family sat down for dinner. That's where they argued, but that's also where they proved how much they loved each other, right? And this is something that resonated with Steven, something that stuck with him. And so, again, don't focus so much on what the topic is going to be, but how you use the topic to really give insights in terms of who you are as a person, your values, your mission in life, perhaps, because the other thing that you said was don't focus on trying to figure out what the admissions office wants to hear from you. Because frankly, if you sound like every other student, you're not going to really put yourself in a great place in a very competitive process. Would you agree with that, Stephen?
Absolutely. You also may find that if two or three different people on our staff might read that application and might have very different ideas about what they want. So
Hmm.
again, there's no one admissions office perspective
Right.
on this. So
Of
be
course.
genuine, be authentic. Don't try to game the system, if you will. Just be yourself.
That's awesome. And some colleges and universities, of course, like USD, ask applicants to answer supplemental essay questions. Stephen, what are you looking for from the supplemental essays that are not easily found elsewhere on the student's overall application?
I think the supplements and the way USD approaches those is we try to ask some questions that do two things. One, I think it helps students understand a little bit more about what's important to us, right? If we're asking these questions, these matter to us. And so our supplemental questions deal with the issues of the fact that we're a liberal arts university and that we want students to talk about what are you excited about studying, and if you have this opportunity to explore, how does that kind of fit? Let them know that our commitment to access and diversity is really important. What have they done to kind of help create a diverse environment in their own lives? We ask them to talk a little bit about the role of faith in their life, if that's been important. And again, that's a core value for the university. So it's a way for, I think, students to kind of understand what's important about the institution they're applying to. And then the second part of that, I think it's a great way for students to tell us a little bit more about why USD, right? And obviously, you're applying to a whole bunch of different schools. What is it about us that we're certainly not trying to get you to convince us that you're going to come here. We understand you've got a lot of choices, but what was it about USD that made you want to apply? What aspect of our campus is something that you're really excited about being a part of? Because we're looking not only for strong academic students, but we want students to contribute to this community in a very wide range of ways, through their talents, through their experiences, through their personal characteristics, and all of those things. And I think these member questions are great ways for students to address those, why this school or why that school, and give some really good examples, based on their own experiences and their own engagement with us throughout the process.
Well, it's great because the role of faith comes up a lot in this conversation in terms of one of your core values. So I think it's important, especially in a supplemental students, to understand that, again, faith is a core value at USD. So I'm willing to bet, and correct me if I'm wrong, Stephen, that if you're able to write a supplemental where you could talk to what you have done as a high school student while in high school that's in line or aligns with faith as a core value, and you could articulate why specifically USD, why you see yourself being there, and like you put it, how you plan on contributing. If your supplemental essay or essays could capture all of that, I'm willing to bet, and there's no guarantees of acceptance ever, right? But I'm willing to bet that that will help students in terms of the supplemental portion of their overall application, put them in a good light.
Yeah, absolutely. And while you're mentioning the role of faith, one of the interesting things is that we find that many students answer that question who are not Catholic at all, but
Right.
they are attracted to us because they feel they're going to have an opportunity to maybe continue to explore their faith, whatever that might be, or maybe they haven't had a faith tradition and they'd like to find out a little bit more about it, and they want to be around students, and they're drawn to us because faith and community service are clearly things that they want to contribute to. So simply, you don't have to talk about your Catholic experience. It's an opportunity for
Hmm.
many students to sort of think about how that resonates with them. And I think that's the beauty of the questions, is it can be very different for every student.
Yeah, and it should be different for every student, to the point earlier where if you're trying to portray yourself like students that were admitted in the past, you're going to sound like a lot of other students. And that's not what you should do in the admissions process. You said it multiple times, Stephen, throughout the conversation here. You want to give your authentic voice, your authentic self. And frankly, if there's a college or university out there, students, that puts you on a wait list and ultimately rejects you, it's their loss, right? There's over 4,000 colleges and universities throughout the entire country, and there's more than one school for every single student, but not every school is for you. So, try to enjoy the process, and hopefully you're gaining a little insights during this great conversation here with Stephen Pultz from USD. So, Stephen, how important is it for applicants to engage with the college through, for example, campus visits, virtual events, or other outreach? And does this have any impact on their chance of admissions? In other words, does USD consider demonstrated interest in its admissions process? And if so, how is it tracked or even evaluated?
I think it's important for students to engage with us to the extent that they can throughout the process, but it doesn't really have an impact on the admissions decision. And I'll explain what I mean by that. The more a student engages with us, and now, of course, after COVID, we've learned that there's so many virtual ways to engage. We realize it's hard and maybe cost prohibitive to maybe visit San Diego, but if you can't get here to campus, you can certainly take a virtual tour. You can join us for one of our virtual information sessions. You can do lots of different things to kind of get to know our admissions team, or we provide lots of opportunity to get to meet our students virtually as well as in person. And I think the more that you're able to engage with an institution like that, the more you start to get a sense of how well you're going to fit in. What is this place all about? Do I fit in? Is it people there kind of resonate with what my values are and those kind of things? So I think engaging is really important, but we don't track analytically that, well, we were going to admit the student, but they haven't really, done anything. So that's going to hurt them in the process. That's not really how it's used, but we certainly want to know that students know who we are and what we're all about, and that they, on some level, feel like they're going to be a good fit. And engagement is one way that they're going to discover that.
Well, we appreciate that. And Stephen, for listeners who may not be familiar with something called the Common Data Set, which so many of those magazines use it for the rankings and things like that, can you explain what the Common Data Set is and how prospective students and their families can use this resource to better understand key aspects of USD, such as admissions data, financial aid, and student demographics?
The common data set is uh, something that institutions are required to report to every year, at the end of every year, based on who came, who's still enrolled, and whatnot. And it's a whole incredible amount of data, everything from the demographics of your incoming class and your student body, to your average class size, to amount of financial aid that's distributed, to your endowment and how many faculty and staff you have. So it's a repository for all kinds of different data, some of which is important in the college search process, and frankly, some of it which is not at all relevant or important at all.
Right.
But it's a way for to composite all of this data into one central place. So I think that there's some usefulness to it, in the sense that if a family is I'm really looking at schools like the University of San Diego, and you could pick 6 or 7 other schools that might be around the same size, maybe have a faith tradition or in that liberal arts category. You might be able to pull some data on those about graduation rates and about average cost or an average financial aid and things like that, class size, and see if is one school have numbers that might resonate more with a family than some others. So I think there's some use for it. But I think in this process, I think it can also be a little bit misleading in the sense that, first of all, the common data set is usually at least a year old, if not 2 years, based on when
Right.
schools have to report to it. So it's not the most current data in that regard, and that can be a little bit misleading. And it would be, for example, if you were going to download some information from the common data set about the University of San Diego and also the University of California at San Diego, one of the premier research institutions in the country that's just a few miles away from us. We are entirely different places with entirely different numbers that if you look at, you might think, well, wait, how come this one is this way and that one is that one? One state supported, so tuition would be one glaring example. But I think you can get caught up by comparing apples to oranges in this very, very easily. And so I think you just families want to be careful about what they're comparing and just to educate themselves a little bit more on what these numbers can kind of represent. So I think it has a role to play, but I think it can be sometimes take you down a wrong path just as easily.
Well, those are great points. And this has been a phenomenal conversation. And, the point of these conversations for families, we've all been to college fairs where there's lines of people and you might get, a minute with the representative because the person behind you is kind of trying to, listen in and trying to get to the rep. And so the point of these podcast episodes is really for me to have the conversation with people like Stephen so that parents could listen on demand as they wish. And Stephen, I think we covered a lot. And I hope that it prompts people to come up with some great follow up questions if they meet with you or any of your colleagues, whether it's on campus or at one of your many virtual events. But I have to ask before my last question, are there any other questions that I didn't ask or a topic that I simply didn't bring up that you'd like to share with us now?
Yeah, thanks for that opportunity, John. And then I would talk about one. USD we're a relatively young institution by college and university standards. We just celebrated our 75th anniversary.
Happy
And
birthday.
thank you very much. And it's been a wonderful year-long celebration of our founders. We were actually founded by the Bishop of San Diego and the head of the Order of the Sacred Heart here, Mother Rosalie Hill. And we were built on this notion of beauty, truth, and goodness. That those were the three pillars of education. And Mother Hill, in particular, who was one of our founders, just felt like we needed the campus should be beautiful. It should be a beautiful place that would attract people to come. And by coming there, they would come and they'd open up their minds and they'd be taught by our faculty. They'd pursue truth through their studies. And when they graduated, they'd be so inspired by what they learned and by their surroundings that they'd want to go out into the world and to make the world a better place. And that was really the story that defines the University of San Diego and how we got started. And today, 75 years later, I think they'd be incredibly proud. And I've tried to hit on some of the things that I think address that our students are not only incredibly academically talented, but they also come to us with a real sense of wanting to make a difference in the world. And today, USD is recognized, thanks to Princeton Review and some others, as one of the most beautiful campuses in the country. So I do
Hmm.
hope families get an opportunity to come and visit. But it's beautiful for a reason. It's beautiful to inspire students to want to take what they've learned and the privilege that they've had of being here and to pursue truth and to go out and to make the world a better place, whether it's in their own local communities or whether it's on a broader scale. And so I think that's a beautiful story that USD has to tell. And I hope your families get a chance to give us a further look.
Well, that was a beautiful explanation, and I really appreciate this whole conversation, which was totally awesome, Stephen. Unfortunately, it does lead us to that last question, which always is, what are your top three pieces of advice that you would provide students and their families getting ready for the college admissions process?
Yeah, and I think you've hit on. I think this is such a wonderful opportunity that you provide for families because there's so much information out there, and I think they really need to learn to be good consumers. As they go through this, there's so much to try to consume, and I think starting early, taking advantage of resources like this are just so important. So I would encourage families to start early and start to gather information. I think we talked about this too, to focus on what the students' goals and aspirations are, what they want to get out of the college experience, what they like and what they don't like, not to focus on rankings and think about this notion of I got to get into this perfect school. I think you mentioned it earlier. There's not one school out there that's a good fit. There's dozens and dozens of them that'll be a wonderful fit for every student that's out there. That'll challenge them, that will inspire them, that will help them along a path that will take them into places they can't even imagine just yet. So I think, focusing on those internal things, not worrying about who's ranked where, I think will go a long way to helping families with this. And finally, I would just encourage them to not stress. Most institutions, you want to look at that common data set, it will prove it that most institutions admit most of the students who apply. We get so caught
That's
up in
right.
the institutions that only admit 10% of the students who apply. That's not most of us. And
Right.
and so there's so many places out there that can be a perfect fit to relax, enjoy the process. It's a great time for students and parents alike to really do some introspective thinking about what the future might hold and what's a place that's going to be a good fit, not only academically, a good fit socially, but a good fit financially as well. And if they think about that, they're going to arrive at a great place with as little stress as possible.
Well, Stephen, you're awesome. This was fantastic. USD is obviously so lucky to have you, as were we, on this podcast episode. I cannot thank you enough.
Thank you so much, John. My pleasure. And thanks so much for the great work you do.
It was an honor, and thank you so much. And to everyone out there, good luck with the college search. Take care, all, and best wishes. Thank you for listening to the College Admissions Process Podcast presented by Prep Expert. Prep Expert offers live online SAT and ACT courses with the best score guarantees, instructors, and curriculum. Go to prepexpert.com to guarantee your child's success.